Tuesday, August 29th, 2023, AGNDD, Iltellireport topic. Charles Ponzi. Please pardon any visual and informational inaccuracies in this entirely AI-generated, Wikipedia-sourced video article.
Meet Charles Ponzi, a man who overcame adversity and setbacks to pursue the American dream. From humble beginnings in Italy to a life of gambling and odd jobs in Boston, Ponzi's determination never wavered. Charles Ponzi was born in Lugo, Emilia-Romagna, on March 3, 1882. He came from a family in Parma, but they had fallen upon hard times and had little money. Ponzi took a job as a postal worker and later attended the University of Rome La Sapienza. However, he spent all his money and did not graduate. Inspired by Italian boys who migrated to the U.S. and returned wealthy, Ponzi's family encouraged him to do the same to restore their socioeconomic status. In 1903, Ponzi arrived in Boston with only $2.50 in his pocket after gambling away his life savings during the voyage. He learned English and took on various odd jobs, including working as a dishwasher and later a waiter. However, he was eventually fired for stealing and cheating customers. Despite his setbacks, Ponzi remained hopeful and determined. In 1907, Ponzi moved to Montreal and worked at Banco Zarossi, where he witnessed a scheme similar to what would later be known as a Ponzi scheme. The bank eventually failed, and Ponzi stayed in Montreal, living at Zarossi's house and helping his family. He forged a check and was caught, spending 3 years in prison. After his release, he got involved in smuggling illegal immigrants and spent 2 more years in prison. After being released from prison, Ponzi returned to Boston and worked as a nurse at a mining camp. He then came up with the idea of starting a utility company at another mining camp and selling its stock. However, his attempt to help a fellow nurse by donating skin resulted in complications and him losing his job. Ponzi continued to search for work and eventually married Rose Maria Gnecco, despite his past being revealed to her. He tried various business ventures, including selling advertising and running a fruit company, but they all failed. In 1919, Ponzi set up an office in Boston and discovered a weakness in the International Reply Coupon (IRC) system. He realized that he could buy IRCs cheaply in Italy and exchange them for higher-value U.S. stamps, making a profit. Ponzi claimed that the net profit on these transactions was over 400%. To execute his scheme, he needed a large capital expense, so he set up a stock company and promised friends in Boston that he would double their investments in 90 days. Some people invested and received high returns. In January 1920, Ponzi initiated his own company, known as the Securities Exchange Company, and enticed 18 investors who collectively invested $1,800. He promptly reimbursed them using funds acquired from fresh investors. News spread quickly, leading to a significant surge in investments. Ponzi recruited agents and generously compensated them with commissions. By June 1920, individuals had invested $2.5 million in Ponzi's fraudulent plan, and by July, he was accumulating nearly $1 million daily. Ponzi's company established branches spanning from Maine to New Jersey, and even the Boston police force became involved in the scheme. Ponzi was paying back investors using money from new investors, but he couldn't figure out how to convert the International Reply Coupons, IRCs, into cash. He realized it was impossible logistically to change the coupons to money. For example, the initial 18 investors would have needed 53,000 postal coupons to make a profit. For the 15,000 subsequent investors, Ponzi would have needed massive ships to transport the coupons. However, Ponzi found that all the interest payments were being reinvested by investors. Ponzi lived a lavish lifestyle, owning a mansion, multiple bank accounts, and a luxury car. He had plans for a honeymoon in Italy, but instead used the tickets to bring his mother to the U.S. She lived with Ponzi and his wife for a while, but passed away shortly after. Ponzi also made a large donation to an Italian children's home and invested in a macaroni and wine company to try and generate profits to repay his investors. Ponzi's rise to wealth attracted suspicion, but he successfully sued a writer for libel, which prevented further investigation into his activities. However, a lawsuit from a furniture dealer and questions about his sudden wealth led to a run on his company. A favorable article in the Boston Post brought in more investors, but the paper's publisher and editor were suspicious and assigned reporters to investigate Ponzi. Ponzi managed to divert state officials from checking his books by offering to stop taking money temporarily. The articles published by the Post raised questions about Ponzi's scheme, with financial journalist Clarence Barron noting that Ponzi was not investing with his own company. Barron also pointed out that the number of postal reply coupons in circulation did not match the number needed to cover the investments made by Ponzi's company. The articles caused a panic run on the Securities Exchange Company, and an investigation was launched. Ponzi's bookkeeping system consisted of index cards, and it was discovered that he was heavily in debt. Concerns were raised about the impact on Boston's banking system if Ponzi's reserves were exhausted. The collapse of Hanover Trust led to the downfall of 5 other banks. Ponzi's investors suffered significant losses, receiving less than 30 cents for every dollar invested. In 1920, the losses amounted to around $20 million, equivalent to approximately $207 million in today's dollars. However, Bernie Madoff's scheme in 2008 resulted in much larger losses, with his investors losing about $18 billion, which was 53 times the losses incurred in Ponzi's scheme. Ponzi faced 86 counts of mail fraud and the possibility of life imprisonment. However, he pleaded guilty to a single count and was sentenced to 5 years in federal prison. The judge emphasized the need for substantial punishment to deter others from carrying out similar schemes. After being released from prison, Ponzi was indicted on state charges of larceny, which surprised him as he believed he had a deal to have the charges dropped if he pleaded guilty to federal charges. He sued, claiming double jeopardy, but the Supreme Court ruled that federal plea bargains do not apply to state charges. Ponzi served as his own attorney and was acquitted on the first 10 larceny counts, but was found guilty at a third trial and sentenced to additional prison time. Efforts were made to deport him as an undesirable alien. In September 1925, Ponzi was released on bail and fled to Florida, where he launched a scam called the Sharp on Land Syndicate. He promised investors huge returns on tiny tracts of land, but it was actually a scheme selling worthless swampland. Ponzi was indicted and found guilty of violating securities laws, serving a year in prison. He then tried to flee the country but was arrested in New Orleans. Ponzi served 7 more years in prison, and investigators were unable to determine the full extent of his fraudulent activities. In 1934, Ponzi was released from prison and faced immediate deportation to Italy. He requested a pardon from the Massachusetts governor, but it was denied. When he left prison, he was met with an angry crowd and admitted to seeking trouble. He was officially deported on October 7th. Meanwhile, Rose divorced Ponzi in 1937 and stayed in the U.S. In Italy, Ponzi struggled with various schemes and eventually found a job in Brazil. During World War II, he wrote his autobiography. Ponzi spent his final years in poverty working as a translator. His health declined, suffering from a heart attack, failing eyesight, and a brain hemorrhage that left him paralyzed. He died in a charity hospital in Rio de Janeiro in 1949. Supported by his friend Francisco Nonato Nunes, Ponzi gave a final interview to an American reporter, expressing that even though people didn't gain anything from his scheme, it was worth it to witness his success. These are various books and sources that discuss the life and schemes of Charles Ponzi, a notorious figure known for his financial fraud. They provide insights into his rise and fall, the impact of his schemes, and the historical context of the time. Some of the sources also explore the mathematical and legal aspects of Ponzi's schemes. Despite his setbacks, Ponzi remained hopeful and determined. Little did he know that his determination would lead him down a path of deception and fraud, ultimately making him one of the most infamous names in financial history.
Hope you enjoyed this AGNDD Iltellireport. Like, subscribe, and click the bell button to get notified during new uploads. And make sure to tune in next time. Stay safe and healthy. Cheers.